Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Katie and I'm the Organic Esthetician. Today on the channel we're going to be doing something a little different. I recently did this podcast, which I posted a few videos back, and it made me realize how much I love interacting with other people in the industry, whether it's skincare or wellness. And so I'm starting a new series of videos where I'm inviting someone else from the industry, an expert in their field, to come onto the channel and have an opportunity to maybe talk about something that we don't normally talk about here on The Organic Esthetician. So today I'm so excited to introduce you to my naturopathic doctor, Dr. Bryant. He's based in Los Angeles. He does a lot of work regulating your endocrine system, balancing your gut health, and even addressing a lot of women's health issues. So I went to see him for kind of a range of all three, but specifically we focused on my gut health. So today's video, we're going to be talking a lot about how your gut and the health of your gut directly affects your skin. So just a quick little background on me. This is probably way oversharing, but I do think it's helpful for you guys just to kind of put it in context. So I have a history of GI disorders, so gastrointestinal disorders. From junior high well into high school, I had pancreatitis. For multiple years, in and out of the hospital. I had gallstones, I had my gallbladder removed. After all of the pancreatitis calmed down, I had IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome, well into my mid to late 20s. Now, okay, I know, here it is. We are going to be talking a little bit about poop. I know, we're not supposed to talk about it, but the reality is that your regularity, or lack thereof, directly influences what's happening not only on the skin on your face, but the skin all over your body. And so what I found out through working with Dr. Bryant is that there are different types of IBS. And while all growing up, I was on one end of the spectrum where I was running to the bathroom every time I ate. As an adult in late 20s into my 30s, I now had the opposite problem where I couldn't go. And dealing with this end of the spectrum, I now started to see some really definitive changes in my skin as far as inflammation and irritation and this kind of ongoing rash that I talk about a lot here on the channel. And it was with Dr. Bryant's help that I was able to kind of regulate all of these things. So again, I'm sorry if it's a little TMI, and I know that we're not specifically talking about anti-aging, but the health of your skin and the reduction of inflammation, not just in your skin, but throughout your entire body, directly relates to how we age, whether we're speeding up the aging process or slowing it down. I'm really excited to introduce some of these topics to you and some of these ideas for you to start thinking about, and also to introduce Dr. Bryant to all of you. So here we go.
All right. Hi, Dr. Bryant. Thank you so much for coming onto the channel and being here with me today.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Yay. So we are going to talk about gut health and how it relates to the skin. But I think first I would love for you to kind of introduce yourself, say a little bit about what you do, because you do something very specific, and maybe even explain what a naturopathic doctor is.
Yeah, definitely. So for those of you guys who don't know me, I'm Dr. Bryant Esquejo. I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor over in Silver Lake, which is a neighborhood in Los Angeles, California. And I basically focus on gut health, skin health, and hormones. So I basically see the skin as a window to inner health and wellness. So most of the time I see patients seeing aberrations or imbalances in their gut health and hormonal health, and those two are very tied together. We'll speak about that soon. And basically what a licensed naturopathic doctor is an integrative medicine doctor. So we are basically the true definition of integrative medicine, which is really cool. We go through a rigorous program, 4-year program in naturopathic medical schools, where we learn how to provide conventional care and natural care. So that's basically integrative. So conventional meaning pharmaceuticals, minor surgery procedures, diagnostic labs, diagnostic imaging, all the things help us really diagnose. But then we have those natural stuff, natural treatment options as well. So natural treatment could be diet, lifestyle, environmental medicine things, targeted vitamin, mineral, and amino acid supplementation, herbal medicine, so many things, and probiotics. And we'll talk about probiotics as well. But yeah, that's what basically a naturopathic doctor is. So we basically try to treat patients integratively by looking at the root cause to help them reach their health goals. Yeah,
It's the best of both worlds, right?
exactly.
And it's preventative, whereas
Yeah.
Western medicine is really corrective or just like band-aids on whatever the issue is.
Exactly, you're right.
So we are going to focus on gut health. And so maybe you can explain a little bit. I mean, I don't know if everyone on the channel is super familiar, but our gut health is directly related to our microbiome, all the microbes in our gut. And I think what's really cool and kind of nerdy is that there are more of them in your body than there are cells in your body. So it's like who's who, what makes
Exactly.
you is really these little guys. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what the gut microbiome is and what it does, and then we can get into how it affects the skin.
Yeah, so I was talking to a colleague about how she would best approach explaining the microbiome. She's this huge nerd on the microbiome. She was telling me that it's basically like a rainforest. So think of the gut. So that's going to be from the mouth and all the way to the rectum or the anus. And that's basically, think of it as a rainforest. And you're going to have cells that called villi. They're basically like crypts, and they're going to be like trees. And in between those trees, there's going to be the animals or the microbes. So the microbes could be bacteria, viruses, parasites, yeast, and yes, you can have viruses and parasites living normally in the gut, but everything has to be in balance, you know. Certain microbes, like certain bacteria, they're basically like bar bouncers. So they keep some populations at bay, like parasites at bay, and other populations like bacteria to flourish. So that could cause anti-inflammatory reactions in the gut for optimal gut health.
I think that's really important to know because everyone's like, oh, I want to kill bacteria. I want to kill viruses. I mean, obviously, externally, viruses, that's kind of a different issue. But when it comes to bacteria, there really isn't bad bacteria. It's just too much bacteria, right?
So you can have both. So you can have pathogenic bacteria. So when patients come to me for IBS, so IBS is basically gas and bloating that's been happening for a certain amount of time, and
Irritable bowel disorder.
Yes, exactly. Irritable bowel disorder. They have changes to their bowel movements. So some people experience loose stools or constipation. And some of that can be due to pathogenic bacteria, but some of it can be due to overgrowth of bacteria. So you really have to figure out what's going on. So pathogenic bacteria are basically disease-causing microbes or disease-causing bacteria, and they send out toxins or chemicals that can cause those symptoms that I spoke about. However, when you have a lot of bacteria, it can cause the same symptoms, but they send out a lot of products. So you want to really figure out what's going on, and the best way to do that is going to be through a stool analysis. And you can speak to a doctor about that. Yeah, you gotta normalize the poop, right?
Yeah. Okay, so now that we know what the microbiome is, how does that directly affect the skin?
Yeah. So the microbiome, I like to think of it as, remember how I spoke about how they make products, right? Bacteria make products. So some of them make an enzyme called beta glucuronidase. So beta glucuronidase is a protein and an enzyme that reactivates inactivated toxins or metabolites. Okay. So let's first
Explain that a little bit.
all of that means.
Yeah.
So let's think of it as, I like to think of estrogen. So estrogen is a sex hormone. We'll speak about hormones a little bit more later on in this conversation. But estrogen ends up in the liver where it gets neutralized or metabolized into something safer for your body to eliminate. And the way estrogen is eliminated is through the gut. So it ends up in the liver, which is right here, goes through some biochemical reactions, and then it ends up in the small intestine. And once it's in the small intestine, it's usually inactivated. So it's ready to just be like sent out of the body, eliminated through poop. But if you have a lot of bacteria making beta glucuronidase, that actual estrogen metabolite becomes unpacked or reactivated. And that could then be reabsorbed into your circulation and can cause symptoms of like high estrogens, and that can manifest as skin manifestations. And there's also like food intolerances as well. So there's a thing called food-mediated dermatitis. Have you heard of it? Or ingestion dermatitis? Have you heard of this before?
I haven't heard of that specific term.
Yeah, so basically, it's when people eat certain foods, it then arises as a rash on the body, sometimes as eczema, and that's usually mediated through sometimes the microbiome and through the immune system. So the microbiome interacts with the immune system, and there's certain cells called T cells. When the microbiome is not really at its optimal, that they get very activated or more prone to being activated by food intolerances. So basically, when somebody ingests something, it activates the T cells, which can then manifest as skin issues. So gut health is basically how we absorb the nutrients, right? And then, depending upon what nutrients we are able to absorb, that will then cause effects later on. So, like, let's say if you have a lot of intestinal issues and you can't really absorb like certain vitamins, they'll then manifest as vitamin deficiencies, and that can then manifest as things later or down the chain, like skin symptoms. There's also the inflammatory and immune aspect. So when you have the inflammatory aspect, or when you're looking at the inflammatory and immune aspect, that can also manifest as skin issues. And that, like the main things I think about are going to be like eczema or ingestion dermatitis.
So, how do we regulate the gut?
Yeah. So there are a variety of options you can look into. So it's going to be looking at your diet. It's going to be looking at lifestyle things. Like, are you stressed out? Stress can really impact gut health. Also looking at hormones,
The
thyroid.
stress I thought was really interesting. Sorry to interrupt you for a second, but it was showing that when you have stress, you then send out these neurotransmitters from your gut, right?
Yeah.
That then kind of perpetuates the cycle, and all of that can lead to acne,
Yeah,
right?
it's really interesting because when you're stressed out, you send out a thing called cortisol, which then shuts down the gut, reduces gut movement, but can also go to the brain. And when cortisol goes to the brain, it kind of shuts down other hormones. And then when you shut down hormones and reduce gut movement, it really causes like certain states of inflammation, which can then manifest as acne or other skin issues. It's really interesting.
It's so interesting because
Mhm.
I think when I think of the gut, as an esthetician, I think of gut skin health, but all of the studies that I started really looking into the gut were all the gut brain connection and
Yeah.
how it really, like, the health of your gut can really affect your mood and
Yeah.
like different mood disorders. So
Yeah.
then to see how that plays into skin where it's all truly connected, I think is so fascinating.
It's really cool because back in the day, we used to think like all these organs were not really talking to each other; they're like really separate. But now we're like in this new realm of medicine where we really like to see health as like a multi-systems thing. So like your skin talks to, let's say, other organs, and like your gut talks to other organs, and like what you said with the brain. So it's like I'm really happy that we're shifting towards that multi-systems approach.
I'm happy too. And I think that it's so beneficial for everyone else out there. Like when you come in with a symptom, to have someone step back and look at the whole picture, because rarely is your symptom centrally located. Like I had a wrist injury, for example, and
Mhm.
I went to see a wrist surgeon, and he worked to my elbow.
Mhm.
And I had to go see a thoracic surgeon who only did shoulder to elbow. And then I had to be the middleman to connect the two.
Mhm.
And no doctors were talking to each other, and no one stepped back and was like, "Oh, it's your back. It's how your hips are." You know what I mean? Like it's so it helps so much when someone looks at this integrative approach. And so I think with skin too, when something happens topically, everyone's like, "Oh, I'm going to combat it with skincare." And
Mhm.
I think one of the things I really wanted to stress with this video, or like to share, is this idea that, this is it is the largest organ in your body, but it's part of this elimination system. And so when it finally comes out in your skin, it's kind of like the last stop on that train line, right? On its way out of the body. And so it could be something 5 stops up, right? On your, if we're using this train analogy, that it's something else that's happening inside the body. And so I find that I think it must be so, I don't know. I really wanted to help everyone see that it's not just topical application of products. It's how you eat and how your gut health is affected that really in turn relates to your skin.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like when patients come to me, they've done a bunch of topical applications, topical medications. Some people have done oral medications, but at the end of the day, it's all about like looking at the root cause. Like what is the root cause of the symptoms? Or stepping back and like what you said about your wrist injury, like the root cause could have just been just like in your spine. So with skin health, you're right. Like with the train analogy, it's really like looking at the stops before getting to your skin. And but yeah, you're right. It's like trying to figure out the root cause, seeing how you can support the root cause, so that you don't get the acne.
So, and skin microbiome, I want to detour over here to skin, but let's talk about how do we address the root cause? So first we have to identify it, right?
You have to identify it. And there are so many root causes. And when patients come to me, I really look at what the pattern of their skin issues are. So I usually delve into hormonal health and gut health. And with hormonal health, that's really talking about sex hormones, adrenal hormones, brain health, and thyroid health. And then with gut health, it's going to be looking at IBS, any symptoms of that, looking at past medical history of gut health issues, really like deep diving into gut health.
And then once you identify whatever the issues might be, then you go into treatment. And so what are the treatments that you, well, I guess we talked about this earlier. So they're herbal remedies or introducing maybe different bacteria into the gut?
Yeah, definitely. So if the root is in gut health, you're right. So we spoke about that earlier. It's really like optimizing the gut microbiome and also making sure that the patient is having great nutrients, a really great diet, a really great lifestyle to support optimal gut health. But if it's rooted in hormonal health, it's really looking at detoxification pathways. And that's also gut health because, like what I said earlier, we eliminate estrogens through the gut. But it's also looking at detox pathways in the liver, which I spoke about. So like all the biochemical detoxification pathways in the liver. And that's going to be done through a thing called the Dutch test, which is a hormone urinary test.
Yeah. It's also very expensive.
Yeah.
But really helpful, right?
Yeah, because you really get to understand what your actual sex hormone levels are. So like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone looks at the precursors. So it's going to be like DHEA, and then looks at cortisol levels, and it looks at also how your body's getting rid of those sex hormones. So you really understand your biochemical pathways. And there are many ways you can really like optimize everything.
So we on the channel, we've talked about our endocrine system a little bit, which is the system that kind of regulates and oversees all of the hormones that you were just speaking about. And we've talked about it in the sense of products that you use topically that affect your endocrine system. So, so maybe something to be mindful of for everyone watching is that when you use certain products topically, they actually change how your body secretes and reacts to those secretions of these hormones, right? And so as a preventative step, before you have to go see a doctor because something is misaligned, is by not introducing these ingredients in your skin that are able to change how your body functions.
Yes, I'm totally there with you. Like a lot of the things that people can do on their own is going to be optimizing their diet and optimizing their environmental exposures and also looking at the lifestyle aspect. All of that is actually like free medicine. So like with diet, like making sure you're eating like the rainbow of fruits and vegetables and making sure you have organic as best as you can. And if you can't really do organic, try to, or fully organic, look at the thing called the Dirty Dozen. And the Dirty Dozen is basically this list of, it changes every year. It's 12 fruits and vegetables that have the highest amount of pesticide spraying. And that's really important to know because when you are exposed to pesticides, it can also cause aberrations to your hormonal system or endocrine system.
Right. In the same way that those dirty ingredients affect your endocrine system, the dirty pesticides on your food affect them. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are like, oh, it's so expensive to do organic. Like some of the non-organic produce maybe even looks better. And that's really one of those things where you can just make a mindful decision to shift how you shop and how you eat to not only promote your own health, but promote your own longevity, right?
Yeah, so like what you spoke about earlier, like if speaking or if buying organic is expensive for some individuals, the jury does it as one option, but also looking at another list called the Clean 15. So the Clean 15 is another set, it's another list. There are 15 fruits and vegetables that have the lowest amount of pesticides sprayed on them. So you don't really have to get those organically, and the jury doesn't need it is best to get those organically.
That's so helpful. I'm going to list those links down below so that everyone can see what Dr. Brian is talking about.
Yeah, and
Uh,
then you spoke about like dirty ingredients. There's also the environmental working group that people could look into as well.
right. EWG, which I love and I think is a really fantastic place to start. But for me personally, there are a lot of things that are listed as a one that I wouldn't use.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that it's really helpful to use the environmental working group's ingredient database. I also think that if you are going to use that, you want to be mindful to search individual ingredients and not whole formulations. So don't put in a product because product formulations change fairly often. People update formulas and it's hard for that database to keep current with all the formulation changes. So by looking up specific ingredients instead of all the ingredients in a product, you're going to get a better idea of what's actually in there.
Yes, I'm there with you.
Okay, so we talked about things that we can do if we're seeing a problem, and we talked about things that we can do before we go to a doctor just on our own at home. What if we go see a naturopathic doctor? What if I come in and see you and I don't have anything wrong and we just want to kind of keep everything functioning optimally and just to support health? What are like diet and things that we could add in, or like what would be your suggestion?
Yeah, so when patients come to me for a wellness visit or wellness optimization, we really just go into their past medical history, what could have been going on with their personal health history. And then we also look at any past labs. And then if labs aren't really up to date, or if they've been a year or more than a year old, we do some updated labs, see what we can refine so that we can optimize their health and wellness and cellular health, so that they're feeling the best. And then usually from the get-go when patients see me, I do some foundational recommendations. So foundational recommendations can involve dietary approaches. So I usually recommend that people have a complex carbohydrate with a protein at every meal. So complex carbohydrate could be oatmeal. Make sure you have gluten-free and organic oats. And then it could also be chia seeds, brown rice, basically like really fibrous things, and brassica vegetables as well. And then protein could be certain types of animal protein. If you do consume animal protein, with animal protein could be hormone-free chicken, wild-caught cold water fish, and then there's also going to be grass-fed beef. And then for plant-based proteins, there's going to be quinoa, there's going to be beans, lentils, and so many options. The reason I recommend that is because it basically helps sustain blood sugar, and that fiber is really great for gut health. And I also tell people when they're at the grocery store, I spoke about this earlier, to have the rainbow of fruits and vegetables because antioxidants are very anti-inflammatory. And then some lifestyle aspects are going to be making sure that you exercise, making sure that you're not stressed out. And when you are stressed out, to have stress relieving strategies. I usually recommend Mindspace. Is that what it is? Or Headspace?
The Headspace, the app.
Yeah, so if any of you are in Los Angeles County, it is free right now, the premium version for LA County residents during the COVID-19 pandemic.
I thought that was nice that they did that.
Yeah, definitely. And then some other things are going to be like targeted nutrient supplementation, micronutrient supplementation, but that's going to be very individualized depending upon the person's labs.
Okay, so that's so helpful. And I feel like I was in my mind being like, okay, I do that. Oh,
yeah. You live naturopathically.
But what about probiotics? right? So
Yeah.
something that you suggested to me that has wildly changed my life, being someone that wasn't very regular and now is, specifically because of these guys. It's
Favorite.
the Microbiome Labs Mega Spore probiotic.
Mhm.
I would love to know your thoughts about probiotics and why a spore-based probiotic is maybe a, possibly a better option.
Yeah, so there are different types of probiotics out there, but before we get into that, I want to speak about like why I would recommend a probiotic and why I wouldn't recommend a
Yeah.
probiotic. So, first, individuals who have really mild gut issues, we try to figure out the root cause of their gas and bloating. That's what they usually experience, and sometimes it's not due to suboptimal microbiome health, but it could just be due to suboptimal digestion. So, I really try to support digestion through a variety of measures. So, when symptoms are more mild, I don't really recommend a probiotic. And then when symptoms are more moderate to severe, that's when I start recommending a probiotic. And there are different types of probiotics out there. So there's going to be spore based, there's going to be refrigerated, which are live, there's going to be the dead ones, which are going to be shelf stable. And it's really like trying to figure out what's the best option for you. I personally prefer spore based probiotics for my patients because that specific brand has a certain type of strain that's going to be causing antioxidant reactions in the gastrointestinal tract, which is going to be really helpful for gut health. But the thing that's really interesting is that there's a study published by a European agency speaking about all the different types of probiotics. And they're basically saying how, and they basically spoke about how the live ones and the dead ones basically get chopped up into little pieces. And those little pieces, because of like the stomach and everything, cause anti-inflammatory reactions, which can then support gut health. The thing with spore based is that spores they can survive the gastrointestinal stomach acid and recolonize the gut, which is really cool. And they then cause anti-inflammatory reactions. And that specific company, I have like no financial ties to them. And that specific company has studies, which is really cool. So I was just like, wow, this is a really good probiotic. And I tried it myself, and I tried it in a bunch of patients, and I've seen a lot of like positive outcomes.
I've taken probiotics off and on for years, and
Mhm.
I've done lots of different ones. I did BioK for a really long time,
Mhm.
and it's something that I like topically too for
Mhm.
skin. When I see a client that has a lot of inflammation or microbial overgrowth, I find that it's really helpful. But as far as probiotics being effective for me personally, this was truly the first one that changed and regulated how my body was functioning. Um,
Yeah.
it, I've been like so thankful to you and to these probiotics.
I'm
So
totally
thank
there with
you.
you. Yeah, like what I said, that specific strain that they use is very anti-inflammatory to the gut, which is really cool. And the thing with BioK is that they also have a lot of studies saying how effective that probiotic is. And they use that specific probiotic in, I think, hospitals in Canada, and they prescribe it to their patients when they are on antibiotic therapy, which is really great.
Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. And also, BioK would be a live strain,
Yes.
right? It's a
Yeah.
refrigerated option.
Mhm.
Just for anyone that's interested. When you're taking antibiotics,
Mhm.
they are depleting the bacteria in your gut
Yeah.
throughout your body. And
Mhm.
so you want to reintroduce more strains
Mhm.
to recolonize the gut or to help support the bacteria that's already there.
Yes, you're right. Mhm. Mhm.
Wow. Okay. So we covered a lot.
Mhm.
We'll see. I'll try and condense it a little bit for everyone, but I think it's so helpful. Okay, so let's recap
Yeah.
about what we can do maybe before you have an issue if you just want to support the overall health of your microbiome and your skin. So
Yeah.
it's through diet, and I'm
Diet.
going to list all of the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 down
Mhm.
below.
Mhm.
And then um, a diversified diet too, right?
Mhm.
Antioxidant rich. We talk about antioxidants on the
Mhm.
channel all of the time.
Antioxidants, really important. Making sure you have your fiber. Fiber feeds the gut, feeds great, feeds the microbiome as well. Making sure you have water. Forgot to talk about
Lots of
water. Water, water,
hydration.
water.
Yeah.
Mhm. Um, uh, Making sure you're not stressed out. having stress coping strategies, exercise.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's my stress coping strategy.
Yeah. And then there are some possible micronutrients you can supplement with. It's all about really figuring out what's worth your while. You don't want to waste your money on something you might not even need. And then, if you really want to, there's the possibility of probiotics as well when needed.
And then what if someone wants to go see a naturopathic doctor? How do they find one in their area?
Yeah, so there are variety of state organizations, and then we have a national organization as well. So state organization websites usually have directories of naturopathic doctors, licensed naturopathic doctors in the state, and then the national organization will have like a wider list of licensed naturopathic doctors throughout the country.
I'll list whichever one you think is most ideal down below for anyone that's interested in finding a naturopathic doctor in their area.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and
So
then,
the national one is the American Association of Naturopathic Physicians, the AANP, and then the one in California is the CNDA, California Naturopathic Doctors Association.
okay, and then for anyone in Los Angeles, I will also obviously put Dr. Bryant's information down below.
Thank you.
And you're still seeing clients right now, right? You're
Yeah,
having.
so we're seeing clients in the clinic. We have a whole entire protocol, screening protocol, and we have a whole entire sanitation protocol in place at the clinic. And we are also doing telemedicine visits for patients.
Are you doing a lot more of those? That seems.
Yeah, so that's picked up, which is really great. A lot of people, especially here in California, with the numbers increasing, they prefer not to leave their house, which makes sense, staying safer at home. And that's picked up, which is the telemedicine visits have picked up, which is really great.
Is that harder for you to do telemedicine?
Yeah,
I
so
feel
I
like
like.
you're very hands-on and.
Yeah, because I really like to see the patient really feel. This is going to sound very hippie of me. Feel their energies, and then I also like to make sure I do physical exams for me to really get a thorough understanding of their health and wellness. So physical exams, I really have to like listen to your stomach and do like the stethoscope and everything.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. This was a really fun conversation.
Thank you so much for being here. So much information. It was so helpful. And I can't wait to come back and see you.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, great. I will see you soon.